Hey everybody, Andrea Bocard here. Newest voice on the podcast. You may remember me from having been on episode 4 of our launch, but I'm actually here this time in the driver's seat. I don't know who anybody was thinking giving me control, but I'm pretty excited, and I've got one of my favorite people here joining us. You may recognize him as the one and only Bill Gerber, co-founder, accountingdepartment.com, the legend, the man, the myth. But we're talking about something kind of cool today. And as a reminder, our goal of this podcast is to bring to life the topics that entrepreneurs and growing businesses have to deal with on a day-to-day basis. So today, Bill, we decided to bring to life one of our favorite topics, which is recognizing when it's time to replace yourself. Essentially, when it's time to fire yourself from the roles that you have built and nurtured and loved in your growing business. So let's just set the stage. It's been 20 years. We're in our 20th anniversary, as we can tell from our pictures here. 20 years of Bill Gerber at the helm. But 20 years ago versus today, you were wearing how many hats?
uh, Four, I don't know, five.
500 hats.
Yeah, so it was everything. So
And I think that's kind of normal for entrepreneurs. Like, let's just set the stage here. Your first days as an entrepreneur of any business, you're wearing every hat. I mean, it was you and Dennis, and how many other employees?
we had one.
One employee as
Yeah,
accountingdepartment.com, or at the time, in case anybody really remembers this, what was the name of the company, Bill?
OSI Business Services.
Yeah, so we're
So
throwing it back big time on that one.
yeah,
So 20 years ago, it's you, Dennis, and one staff person. That's a lot of hats to wear. Now, I joined 10 years ago, so I can't say what it was like 20 years ago, but I can say that 10 years ago, I was a 51st employee. So you were still wearing a lot of hats. Now, when you decided to hire me, what hat were you getting rid of?
marketing.
Why? You don't like
Because
marketing?
no, but at the time for years, like any new industry, and that's what we were really doing. It was a new industry. I mean, back in the day, I went business to business locally, trying to figure out how to actually sell accounting services. But when you came in, it was the marketing one, and I had 4 or 5 outsourced marketing companies that I was dealing with at that time. And I remember I had a meeting every single week with every different one of the companies, and one did pay per click, one did SEO, one was the content writer, one was the website. I mean, I all broken up, so I didn't have everything in one pie. And we started making tweaks and changes as we started. But that was years in. I mean, prior to that, it was trying to figure out what accounting services was and how to sell it. And we had our challenges back in the day, that's for sure.
So let's talk
So
about you going door to door, because that's nothing like what we do now. We're not going door to any door, or we don't even have doors. We're online. Um, what did it look like when you were first starting and selling?
Well, I wanted to get into this industry. I didn't know much about it, as most of you know. My partner Dennis is the CPA and has the accounting background. I had no accounting background. I did spend about I don't know 6 months going to about 50 different CPA firms trying to pitch an idea I had about this business and how it could work. And everybody thought I was kind of crazy at the time. But then I finally met Dennis, and we partnered up, and we've been best friends for 20 years now. It's really worked out well. But at the end of the day, when I asked Dennis, he asked me, he goes, "How are you going to sell this?" Because 20 years ago, 25 years ago, bookkeepers went to CPA firms and knocked on the door and said, "Hey, I'm a local bookkeeper. I want to get some work. Do you have any extra work that you can give me, or a client I can do the books for?" And I said right to Dennis, I'll never forget this. I said, "I just spent 6 months in CPA firms' lobbies looking for a part. I'm never going back to a CPA firm again. That was just not how I was going to do it." So after many, many things I read about and read about accounting, because I didn't want to know everything about accounting and what Dennis could teach me about what I wanted to do, I came up with the old school. If anybody's been around for a long time, it's called the flip book. And I had a flip book that I carried around with me, and I went business to business, door to door, and I started asking people about their accounting and bookkeeping. They were very confused because they thought I was talking about tax when I wasn't. I was just talking about doing the books at the time. And I went door to door, and we knocked on people's doors, and it was it was quite an adventure for a while. Actually, I did that, but I was doing it more for myself. Rejection was not a big deal to me. I could care less. I've been in sales for, 40 years. But the door to door, getting the pitch, getting the lines, changing my book and explaining it to you. We brought in a few sales, which allowed us to, get that first bookkeeper in here. She was from North Carolina. We had a $1,500 a month T1 line coming into an office to a server,
Wait,
which
wait,
was
wait. I need
insane.
you to tell everybody about,
Yeah.
because I mean, let's be fair, everybody listening, I know the insides of some of these stories. So what you need to hear is about how Bill and Dennis set up this first employee.
Yep.
Walk us through
So
that.
yeah, so back in the day, we didn't know what we were doing, and most people didn't really know how to use two or three monitors. Three, forget it. Two was the big deal. So we actually would fly to somebody's house when we hired them, and I would sit on the couch in the living room and play on my phone and try to do sales, and Dennis would sit there and train the person. But first, before we trained them, we actually had to open up their computer and put in a dual video card just so they could run two monitors. And sometimes that took Dennis and I like a half a day to just set that up because things never worked with technology. And then we would log into our server that was based in New Jersey with a T1 line and get it set up. And Dennis would start doing his training and stuff. So it
It's
was very
weird to go
different.
into someone else's house. Like, do you want to come down and visit me soon and set up my computer?
We didn't know any different. We didn't know else how to do it, and there was no one to follow. But after a couple of them, it just was kind of like this is not sustainable. We spent $300 for airline for just Dennis to go to Florida one time, and the woman didn't work out in the first hour, and he wanted to come home, and I made him stay. I'm like, you got it. I mean, $300 back then, we didn't have the money, and but so that wasn't sustainable, and we switched that model after about five people. We switched it, and we got someone that could do the training online, and we used some different softwares back then. I think it was, I don't know what it was, maybe Skype or something like that, but that's how we
So
did
let's
it.
talk about that because I feel like that's such a common experience, especially in the beginning of a business or even, years into the business where you have this idea of how you're going to do something. This is the process you're going to follow. This is how you're going to go get new sales. This is how you're going to go get new employees, and this is how they're going to be successful. And then you realize after X number of doing it, like, okay, wait, we wrote this wrong. This isn't working. This is too expensive. This is crazy. Um, you know, I personally love the whole idea of you guys flying around the country and setting up everybody's computers. But let's talk about sales, because that is obviously your domain as that in your role as the co-founder, you've overseen sales and marketing and revenue growth for 20 years. Um, what did you start with as your model, and at what point did you pivot?
Well, the pivot came from, it's an education thing, and for a lot of entrepreneurs, when you engross yourself in anything, I have a little ADD. Once you get involved in it, you're just mentally going into it. So it was from books to seminars to as much as reading and I understanding that I could get. And it wasn't about accounting; it's just about more of what the clients needed more than anything. But going door to door was not going to be sustainable. Going door to door was not going to expand the business. I live in outside of Hartford, Connecticut. There was a local business show that was coming up. I think it was like $1,500, which was more than we had. And I decided to do that. And what I did was I doubled down on, now I had to design a booth. And I don't have a marketing department. So I had to go to my partners and we had to design a booth and then I had to get it printed. And I don't know how much it was, 500,000 bucks, but we got a booth. We went down to that Hartford show. It was about $1,500 and it was a business to business show. And now I had business owners at my door in front of me instead of me going door to door. So that worked out really well in the sense of I realized that that was more scalable. It was more personable. They were coming to me because of what the sign said, so we knew they needed something instead of going door to door, and they don't even know why. If am I coming to get my muffler fixed, or am I trying to sell them a service? So the business to business show worked out really well, and then I decided to get to do it again, and I ended up going to New York. New York had an open business show, and they told me there was going to be 5,000 people there. So then we spent all this money on getting the trinkets to hand out, the 5,000 trinkets,
Mm-hmm.
and what I didn't realize, and you learn as you grow, is that was an open business show. An open business means anybody could come in. Well, meanwhile, everybody came in, and people off the streets were coming in. They were just picking up all the stuff from people and filling their bags, and it was just a complete waste of time at that point. I did find some people, but I realized that I needed to hone in on the shows that I was really doing to make sure that what's my target audience. Just the stuff that we've learned from years ago. Who am I really trying to talk to, and how do I get in front of those people? But the face to face and the recognition and the brand and the booth was all come into play. And back then they had email marketing, so they were pre-telling people who's going to be at the show, and it just seemed to get out there a lot quicker than me trying to run around door to door in Hartford or something like that.
Let me ask you a question, because I feel like if I were starting a business early, and money is tight and every expense matters, and you've got to really think about where you want to put your dollars. And then you go to whatever, the Javits Center or something, and you're thinking this is going to be this great windfall, and it's not, and it sucks. It's not the same as now. Like, we have an event that stinks, it's a stinker, it is what it is. Like, we've got a big budget and a big team. How do you keep going in the face of that? Yeah, I feel like it would be so hard for someone to just end up dejected and like, I mean, I know you're not going to pack it in and shut down the business, but how do you handle not having a roadmap, not having a sort of clear-cut confidence in one path versus another, and then continuing to try again? Like, how do you mentally psych yourself up for that? Do you? Did you just drink a lot?
I don't
Because it's
know.
possible.
It's like a dog with a bone or something. You just knew what you had. So I think from the month of March to the month of December, right, 6, 7, 8, we had 0 clients. I couldn't sell, and I was trying to go to door, and the one that I got was it was minimal, and I got it. But come that January, when we turned the corner, we actually got 7 accounts, and now we had to hire somebody else. So now your eyes just go like big. Now you have a control issue as an entrepreneur and as a salesperson by heart. You have a control issue. I don't have the people to go just sell 50 accounts tomorrow. So now what do you do? And then I started honing in on saying, okay, we have money coming in. What can we do? And what we did was we started to look for other shows that might be beneficial to us. I did try another show in Chicago. It was a huge, I'll never forget this. It was a huge medical show. And I thought, you know what? Hartford had like 3,000 people. So why not go to Chicago where they had 25,000 people? And I went to that show. It was a medical show. And I thought maybe getting into the medical field would be better for accounting at first. Out of the 25,000 people that were there, I think 80% were from another country. I mean, I didn't do my knowledge base. Who's coming? What's the criteria? So you dibbed and dabbed in those different shows. You learned what you needed to learn. And then, of course, like an entrepreneur, I'm getting this Inc. magazine, and Inc. magazine was having their Inc. 500 trade show. And they also had 2 or 3 shows at that time. One was called GrowCo, and another one was called Leadership. And I called them. I told them I was a nationwide business, which was not really true, but I was a
It was,
nationwide. It
you
was
had intent.
an intent to
You
grow
had intent.
nationwide
Yes.
with
So I
virtual
think that's
employees.
valid.
Yeah. So we had virtual employees, which we had 2 at the time, but I pitched this whole thing, and they let me come into that show at a very low rate just because of what we were trying to do. Now, the other vendors that were there were Travelers Insurance, Mercedes-Benz, I mean, big companies, probably paying a fortune. I have no idea. So we did that show, and it worked out well. Now, I do know from shows, just from experience and from learning, that you got to do them for 3 years in a row to get any traction. It's just the first year they walk right by you. The second year they might take some, whatever it is. But it's being there, same booth, same person, same face, and same pitch, and you're there. And we started picking up business from those 3 shows over the next handful of years.
So
With that,
let's talk about my favorite thing, Bill's lessons learned from the trade show. Now, before you replaced yourself out on the road, I got to hang out with you a lot. So I got to know some of the favorite quirks. I don't know if you have a white box laying around that you can share with everyone, but the white box was my favorite. So for everybody listening, I just need you to picture this. It was 2014. I want to say the first one I went to with you was Startup Grind. And that was in the computer museum, like in Northern California. That was a cool location. Remember they had that big snack bar on the wall. It was really,
Unlimited. Yeah, it
I
was
mean,
tremendous.
something stand out to you, like shows you would go back to simply because they fed you really well. That would be a thing for me. But yeah, startup grind, I remember, and that was the idea. We're gonna go after startups. They need accounting, they've got funding, like this is a great fit, target market. And you roll in with your booth and your, wheelie thing, and I don't even know, 2,000 little plastic white boxes. And what'd you put in them?
$100,000 bars and a business
I'd
card.
never even seen this candy bar before. And I think we had probably been in person together like twice. This is like my first few months on the job. There's 100 grand fun size bar, your business card, and a little white box. And I don't know if you remember, you probably remember this just fine, but I actually thought it was hilarious because we spent the entire show opening conversation with everyone who walked by based on what would you do with this white box? Some people had some good ideas, like way better than me. I was like,
Yeah.
um personal rescue kit. I put snacks in it. What made you pick the white boxes? I have to know. Like it's been 10 years.
Because it meant nothing, and you wouldn't throw it away because you
Okay.
didn't know what to do with it. From putting paper clips in it, to putting medical stuff in, to put it in your golf bag, to you just wouldn't throw it away because it had a purpose for smaller things. And the candy
Just
bar,
weren't sure what the purpose was yet.
yeah, and that's created conversations, and that's all you're trying to do is break up conversations and stuff. But yeah, we did those for years, and it worked. That was years later. Before that, we did all
That
sorts
was
of
years ago.
things.
So talk to me.
But
I mean, that was one of my first ones. But you had a lot of rules by the time I came into the picture.
no,
So
I mean,
let's
yeah,
talk
I
about
mean,
some of the rules that people can like literally hear from all your lessons. There's no
this
eating,
is just trade shows. I haven't
just
got
trade
into
shows.
the
Yeah, yeah.
online marketing stuff
We'll
that
get
we
into
started
your other
doing.
rules in
Yeah.
another episode. People can only listen
Listen,
so
there's
long.
there's basic things, that people don't understand about trade shows, but you're going to be working from 6:30 to pretty much 11:30 at night. 6:30. I mean, you got to be comfortable, so you got to wear some sort of sneakers or comfortable shoes that really work for you. The other thing that I was a big pet peeve of mine is a lot of the vendors, a lot of the other sponsors, they had the people that work the booths in like other hotels. And I thought that was insane. Like, if the hotel's on floor 3, I want to be on floor 6. I mean, I don't want to go take they didn't have Uber back then, but a taxi to go somewhere else to get to the hotel. So convenience was a huge thing, cost more money, but I was there, and didn't make any sense to try to save those couple dollars at that time. There's things about being in the booth that you want to make sure is that, nothing is on the booth. So there's no eating at the booth. There's no food at the booth. You want the booth to be inviting, so you have to push the booth back so people come into the booth and get out of the main line of all the traffic and stuff. So they're kind of sucked into that. You never sit in a lot of people sit behind the booth, so they have the booth and they sit behind the booth like you're in your principal's office or something like that, which is I always looked at people, it's a disaster. So, and then
Well, it
things.
is weird to like walk up to somebody sitting behind a table, like as if you got to check in or register or
Yeah.
something. Like I don't know
And
what it
then
feels like.
and
I need to
then
ask a really good question in order to go up to
and
them.
then one of the worst things that people did is they put unqualified people in the booth. So whether you hired the people or you just put people that didn't know what they were talking about just to fill the booth didn't make any sense. And that's no way to get a return on investment either. But the return on investment was always a long-term return. You need to make sure that it's not, if you're looking to go do a show for whatever, $5,000 or $10,000, you're expecting a return tomorrow, then the owner has unlimited, well, not unlimited, but
Unrealistic.
unrealistic expectations. It takes years to build the brand, the person, the relationship, the high five and good to see you again, being able to tap someone from last year to this year and continue a conversation because you remember. Those are all things that are really important. But convenience, comfortability, don't eat at the booth ever. Go sit with other people, at lunch, and go, sit next to someone you never know. You better be the first one there, and you better be the last one to leave, and you better be the last one to leave on the breakdown. You don't know how many sales I got because I was the last man standing there, and just seems to be somebody always walks through. But you know what? There was nobody else to look at except for me. So if you're there, be there.
And there's always
And
that guy who like thought about talking to you the whole time and didn't get to it, and he just always happens to be walking out last.
yeah,
So Bill, let's be honest. You laid the groundwork for events here. I mean, I can't even take credit. I walked in, there were about 7 a year at the time when I started here. I mean, now we're doing 50 something a year, so we've certainly grown. But you laid the groundwork. And to your point, the most successful businesses have knowledgeable people at the booth. Who's more knowledgeable than the co-founder? But that doesn't last forever. I mean, it's certainly an experience. I know from experience to what it's like to go into an event and have the only thing people say to me is Bill here? Is Bill here? And you laugh about it and you know whatever. And of course it matters because it's a reflection of how well we're branded by your presence. But at some point, we were going to outgrow you because you can't go to 50 events. You have other responsibilities and a life. And we were gonna scale. So at some point you said, I need to have people that can do this. The day before you said that, what happened? Where were you mentally before you finally went, whoa, gotta start
Yeah.
replacing myself?
Yeah, I mean, there's a million things about, that I could talk about flights and about when to book the flights, how to book the flights, what airlines to take, where you're located, and blah
Well,
blah
let's
blah
not
blah.
give away
No,
everything.
no, no, I won't. But at the end of the day, obviously, 50 shows was not a. I did it, and I really enjoyed it, and I was the face, and people recognized me, and I had a fun time on the road. Some people liked the hotels and the foods, and at my weight, you can see I really enjoyed myself over those years. But there was a time where it wasn't sustainable, and it wasn't really that. It was shows were crossing over, and I couldn't be in two places at one time. So sometimes they wanted me to speak, and then I wouldn't be at the booth, and where's the value, and blah 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 blah. So, anyways, we decided to hire someone. So we came up with the sales, the compensation plan. I'm learning all about that from all sorts of people that I know in the industry, and we decided to interview people. We want to make sure they are okay to get on the road because this is going to be you're going to be on the road and you're going to be doing presentations at home. It's a work from home position on top of that because we're 100% virtual, and we hired someone. So somebody I thought that was going to work out. I you know I hired him, and then I took him to a show. I don't know what state we were in, but I flew him to a show, and I sat him at the show, and I taught him everything, and just the way he was and the way he reacted. I think it was noon. Was it noon? I told him to go to the airport and fly home, and he was done because he just was not going to represent the company the way that I wanted to, and that was just based on a feeling that I had, and he wasn't going to be able to deliver. So at the end of the day, you strike out, you know. So we ended up hiring another person,
But wait,
and
so when you struck out, did you hit pause and go, is this possible? Like, does someone out there exist? Is this, do I have to settle? Like, what are some, I would be super concerned. I mean, yes, I agree. When somebody is not going to cut it in that role, you just have to move on because you're not going to train somebody to have a personality that they don't have. But were you scared? Because obviously you chose this person, like from the initial interview. Did you
no,
get
I think
nervous?
that I think it was a bad hire. We've all done bad hires. Listen, we're in the accounting industry. I come from no accounting background. I hired someone that had accounting background, and that was probably the mistake because right at that point, shut up, you know too much. I mean, we're pitching a solution, not so much the accounting.
Right,
Accounting
not step
happens to be
one.
accounting happens to be their problem, and that's the field we're in. But at the end of the day, he didn't have it to be able to deliver what we were looking for. So at the end of the day, we did hire somebody else and we got on the road. But I mean, that's when the fun starts. When you have a person that can really pull it off and follow the process that I totally laid out on the sense of you better be there early, you better be there late, you got to book the flights here. This is the hotel situation, all that type of stuff. And someone really grasped onto it and could follow it, then you could see results. And as he worked in the booth, I started drifting off and talking to other people, and you let him go and let him go and let him go. There's a million questions that come up, things that we have to change, situations on the road from shipping. One time the booth didn't show up, another time
One
we didn't
time,
have this. Yeah.
my
So
I have a booth still somewhere in UPS's warehouses.
what do you do? How do you handle it? What do you got to go? Sometimes there wasn't enough candy or whatever it was, what store, just everything. Go buy a TV. I don't care. Just when you're in the situation, you're in the situation. So as he learned all those things and he learned what I meant by making sure the show was perfect, I started doing more speaking. So now I was going to these shows with him and getting on stage and doing speaking, which helped out. We did some breakout sessions, which helped out. And then there's a whole learning process on that. I won't get into that.
Well, that was a fundamental switch in some of our marketing when we were able to do that. We had never done that before. And I think it's important for people to hear that. I think naturally there's like this indication where people are like, oh, I'm going to do webinars and breakouts. We didn't start that for a while. I mean, we really stayed away from that and just put a presence there. And then we did get into it. You did it. I even did some. And that had like mixed results, but we got to try more things as we got bigger. One thing that stuck that we can all agree on was a big hit was the 3 to 5 minutes on stage.
Yeah,
That's
just
been
yeah, being
a
their
big fit for us.
gold or whatever the top level sponsor
Mm.
is. Be that sponsor that can get on stage for 2 to 3 minutes. They let you say who you are. That's all you need to do. It will resonate with someone in the stands. They'll beeline to you and say, "I got a problem," So they can't walk by the booth because they saw you on stage and making that presence there. So we really focused on that. Not that everybody didn't want to do a breakout talking about accounting, but there was a three other breakouts going on how to drive your company to $100 million or increase your marketing and make back $1 million, whatever. So everybody was attracted to the growth sides. We're more of a problem cost side, to that. So, but the people that we did have in our breakouts, they were good,
Well, they
So
completely
they
self-selected into a
right,
problem. So it was just would get awkward because,
yep.
you got to be comfortable speaking to a room set for 100 that has 7 people sitting in it, which is not the most comfortable, though I know you're comfortable with anything, but not everybody is. So let's talk about this because uh, parallel to this growth and adding people and salespeople onto the team, we went from, showing up at an individual show, and just sort of being there as a sponsor to becoming a national sponsor of major organizations and going to all their shows to having a much larger brand presence at multiple national organizations and national sponsorship levels. So that was a big commitment and investment. Now, at this point, you've got a roadmap, like you felt confident in these things. And we've sort of continued to apply that idea of the formula of 3 years, we try it out, we go after our target market, we do all this stuff, but this has grown so much larger than any given individual or person, and now we've got a team of road warriors that go out and do these things and even get up and speak. At what point did you stay, or are you still sort of getting to that point, like, wow, if I don't go to any of these things anymore, this is working. And I feel confident in that because that happened at some point. It definitely did. I mean, I go to things now without you all the time.
No, no, yeah, totally,
So
yeah. I mean,
how did you know when you just felt that sort of like, okay, this is not my thing anymore, and I'm good with it?
I guess at the end of the day, you get the right people. You know what I mean? So, I've seen them enough at the shows. They've been at the shows for 3+ years, all of them, and they were comfortable. They knew the names of plenty of people that were there. And at that point, I felt that there was a transfer. People still ask for me sometimes, but now it's like, they know the names of the people that are supposed to be there, which is huge. Back in the day when we did the Inc. and we switched over to the Vistage and the entrepreneur organization shows and all the other shows that we're doing, you had to start building your brand inside of those organizations, but those organizations were our target market. So we got rid of the big medical one field. We got rid of the small little shows, and we started focusing on what our core was, which were these, $1 to $50 million type of businesses, and that's where they were. So we came there, we had a solution just like everybody else does, and the right people will be the right fit. But getting off of stage and letting them take over is just a natural progression on anything that we do. When we hired HR, when we hired you for marketing, you just have to start to learn to step off. And I always show people this. I have a Word document on my desktop, and it's called Shit I Do. And as an entrepreneur, I learned it a long time ago. Write down all the stuff you can do and start whittling down and pushing it down, down, down. Now, it's never going to be as good as the entrepreneur doing it himself. They always say it's 80% or 70% as good as you could do it, but that doesn't mean you can't hire two people to have over 100%. You know what I mean? So that's just what you have to do. And that shit I do document is still sitting on my desktop. I'm looking right at it. And it's just constantly monitoring what you're doing, the value of your time, and who could do it better. And then the goal is to hire people that are better than you, So from the HR was the same problem. I knew it. I hired the first 42 people myself with no HR background. But I knew once I hit FMLA at 50, we were like, oh, this is not going to work out. I don't know anything about this. So you had to hire the right person, you know. Looking back on the biggest mistake I made, I probably should have hired our HR director when we had 10 people. Because that was just,
Well, so
that was a bear.
that's a great segue. So here I have to ask my favorite question of all. Bill Gerber today in 2024 knows a ton. I mean, you're talking 20 years of experience out on the road, managing sales, managing the brand, creating the brand, speaking on behalf of ADC. What would you tell Bill Gerber of 2004 or anyone else in that sitting in those shoes today, right now, that is like literally looking at their should I do list and it's everything because it's just them or maybe them and a co-founder? What would you tell them that would at least help them sort of navigate the beginning or get them closer to Bill Gerber 2024?
I think, I mean, obviously the major reason for the success is I have a partner who happens to be an accountant. We never spent more than we could. We never took anybody else's money. So we never could do that fast, growth like a venture capital backed company. It was an organic growth for 20 years. We've never had a down year. We've grown every single year. But it was knowing what I could spend and then kind of breaking out where the return was going to be to make sure that we had the sales that we needed to bring in X amount of people every single year and keep the business growing. And then we really tailored the marketing. You have to know where you are. Dennis and I put $10,000 into this business to get it started. We ran out of money very quickly. We had to get more and we had to sell more. And that's what we started doing was selling. But that brought in the revenue. But we never wanted to outgrow what we could do. So you never want to do more, bring in more sales than you have staff for, and you don't want to have more staff than you have sales for. So that was the balancing act that you had to do, but you got to take it slow. I mean, we spent $500 a month on Google. My partner Dennis, who's an accountant, was like, "What the hell is this? 500? Are you crazy? There's no return." You know what I mean? And back in the day, and then over a couple of years later, some guy I paid like $10,000 to do content writing because I can't write. And there was companies out there say, if you don't have content out on the internet, you're screwed.
Content
And
is king.
right, so we started
Sure.
doing content, and then it was SEO, organic optimization. Well, what the hell's that? Well, you have to slowly do it and know what your bounds are. When we went to $1,000 a month on Google, I won't tell you what we spend now, but I mean, $1,000 a month, that was a lot. It's 12,000 of the budget. Was the return there? Now we had a big win. I remember that, I put $1,000 a month on the Google, 500, whatever it was. I get a call from a kid in Sacramento, California. He just got $750,000 in venture capital money, and he called us to do his books. And I said to him, "Did you look like locally or anything? Like this is 20 years ago, you know what I mean? Did you look locally or did you look at all? Like he goes, I said, how'd you find this? He goes, Google. Well, back then we were the only ones on Google,
Right.
and
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
now I'm sitting there going, wow, there's money here all over the country.
Mm-hmm.
So as the return came in, we started pumping more money into from the shows, shows to travel. And at that point, pay per click and stuff. But at that point, I mean, I was just gonna go, and we just flew. And
I
then at
really
some
appreciate
point,
though that your major advice is to use a budget.
well, I mean,
I
it's
love
not
it. No,
because
I
I'm
think
a,
Dennis is going to be really proud.
well, it's not. Well, let's just go back, right? 25 years ago, you guys don't know me, but I went bankrupt in another business because of the books. This is how I got into this industry. I had no books. Forget the books. I had no books. Taxes were late. I had no financials every single month. I didn't know if I was coming or going. All I know was robbing Peter to pay Paul, just like all entrepreneurs are doing, because I was going faster than the money was available to do. So it's a natural thing that if you have a budget and you know what you can do and you organically now listen, I didn't get $10 million to do this. That's a different animal. But I've had plenty of companies that burnt through $5 or $10 million, and they ended up over. The business didn't work. And I'm sitting there going, oh my God, if you gave me $10 million and you organized with it, you could, oh, well,
Right.
you could have, this could have been, we could have been here, 10 years ago where we are today, at least.
And I think that's really valuable information for anybody listening, whether they have funding or not, because it's almost irrelevant. I mean, yes, funding may help to a certain extent, but without a framework and a budget and an understanding of ROI and a constant analysis of that information, you're not doing anything better than anybody else. You're gonna just turn around and have no idea where it went, which I'm pretty sure happens to people all the time.
And if you
So,
have unlimited funds like some of these huge companies, then I guess it doesn't matter. There's a cross point that it makes it. I knew a company that did $100 million and lost 30 million doing it. That doesn't make it like we couldn't. How could I pay my mortgage for God's sake on it? But if you have money coming from somewhere else, it didn't matter. And there's a certain break point, a cross point where that would be profitable. 99% of businesses are small businesses, and that we don't have those pockets. None of us have. We came from nothing.
right.
All of us came from nothing. So you have to really monitor where you are and grow at the pace that you can do. Listen, the reason I left Ink Shows is because they wanted to jack. I never forget this. It was $100,000, and they wanted to jack me to $500,000.
I
And I
remember.
was like, we're not doing this. And
Well,
at
yeah, the
that
whole
point,
conversation was no
somebody,
small business is going to be operational within these parameters. There's no return that would justify that.
but Mercedes and Travelers, and they can pay that. I
Right.
couldn't pay that. So we had to back out of those shows, and we had someone that was in a Vistage group in New York. He invited me to the show. I called the person that was running the show and asked him how much it would be to sponsor it because I wanted to have a booth. If I'm going to go, sure, I'll sit in the stands and learn something, but I might as well try to sell something while I'm there. And we did that show in New York. I don't know, maybe there was 700, 800 people there, but we got killed with sales.
Yeah.
And right from there, then it was just like, this is where we got to be, you
So it
know?
sounds like ultimately, if we were to boil this down to a few things, anybody in your shoes or who wants to be in your shoes should be ready to do a few things. One, pivot. Pivoting is massive. Two, operate within a budget, some type of framework, and be accountable for what you're spending and be able to explain it, whether it's Google or something else to
And
somebody.
don't be cheap at the same time.
Don't be cheap, but
Yeah,
don't overspend.
right.
Sounds like my personal mantra these
Yeah,
days.
oh, yeah.
Uh, and uh, and I guess from a replicating yourself standpoint, go with your gut.
Yeah, I mean, listen, sales is sales. It just depends on what type of sales you need them to do. Channel sales partners are different than on the road salespeople that are different than people that just pitch a product over the internet. Like there's a lot of expense apps that you can just show the 6 things that the application does, and it's not a sales thing. This is really like you got to be a mature salesperson that can talk to. I mean, in our industry, we're talking to every type of business under the sun. So that takes years to understand a manufacturing, an inventory, a SaaS business, a professional service, but just understanding the mechanics of how the accounting works so you can start having intelligent conversations. And that takes years. So if you're not willing to invest in someone and give them the time to grow, then that's fine. I also, the expectations, we have to, the money's coming in, the work is coming in. So the sales was never a problem. It was gauging that was the problem. People versus sales type of thing. But yeah, no, at the end of the day, then you switch over to once money starts coming in, however you want to get it, then we switched over to the internet marketing and the pay-per-click and the referral program with our existing clients. And now it's the trickling
Well, and now we
effect.
have a much larger team, which is a perfect place to wrap this up because I don't know if you know this, but our next episode is going to dive into EOS and how we're using it to really drive right people, right seats.
Yeah.
So I think that is probably a great place to sort of focus this on because at the end of the day, what you really got at today was figuring out how to get the right people in the right seats so you don't have to sit in all the seats.
So EOS before you should I tell them about years ago. So I mean,
You can tell them, yeah,
but yeah,
tell
I
them.
mean for those, it doesn't matter what scaling process or program you use. We happened to learn about EOS about 10 years ago. I read the book and we started implementing different things within it, from a vivid vision to where we're going to go 3 years from now. And we started doing pieces of it. And then we realized that we needed some help, and they have coaches, just like everybody has coaches. And we hired a coach that wasn't the best fit, right? But we tried him for about 2 years because the coach that I really wanted was unavailable because they only did in person, and we're a 100% virtual company.
Don't tell people who are coaches. We're
I
gonna
won't. I won't.
we're gonna save that secret for
All
another
right.
time.
But then COVID hit, right? And then everybody had to do virtual. So this coach learned how to do virtual, and then we fully have been implemented in it for years now at this point. But it's been there for 10 years of doing pieces of it, which you have to be a very organized company. Always, every division has to be accountable. Every division has a budget. Every division has a goal. Those are all things that we always had. It's just very structured and easy to read and see now. So it's taken the company even further. And the right people in the right seats is, get your director level, get your management level, get your staff level, get those people in the right place, promote people as fast as you can within your budget, right? Listen, some people we couldn't wait for. We couldn't promote them fast enough. I'm sorry, we didn't have the money, or we didn't have we weren't in that section. We didn't need it yet, and they had to leave. And don't ever forget, the people that you start the business with don't always make the turn with the people that you're going to continue with. Someone that can help you run a 10 or 20 person company can't help you run a 200-person company that right now. And those are tough conversations, and they're not fun, but the people in the right seat at the right time is the key. But that changes, so be careful of that too.
Well, on that note, first and foremost, thank you, because I have a feeling there's a lot of people who can listen to this and take a tremendous amount of things, to whether they want to get into trade shows or whether they just really want to figure out how to identify when to move out of a seat and put someone else into it. Next week, we're going to be talking about EOS. Amy Harold's going to join me, and we're going to talk about not only how we've implemented it at ADC, but why and how it is affecting our right people in the right seats, the good, the bad, the ugly, and everything in between. So you're welcome to join us. But thank you for all of this. And I think that about wraps it up today. So
Yeah, this is 2024. Have a good summer, everybody. We'll see you on the road.
bye.
Bye.